So no, it's not the beginning of crypto summer. It's a short squeeze, a good old-fashioned short squeeze, both in the equity markets and the crypto markets. Everybody was, getting short towards the end of last year.
As of the time this article was written, the price of Bitcoin was trading at $23,318. This represents a decrease of 1% in the past 24 hours. There is widespread skepticism among investors as to whether or not Bitcoin can break the $30,000 barrier before the end of the month. Despite the fact that $30,000 might not be in the cards for this month, investor Mark Yusko shared his perspective on what he sees coming in the future. Yusko is of the opinion that the bull run will commence earlier than the majority of people currently anticipate. Yusko stated his belief that this is just a short squeeze and not the beginning of the crypto summer in an interview with Cointelegraph. He explained that he thinks this is just a short squeeze because the markets were getting short toward the end of last year. He is of the opinion that the value of cryptocurrencies will not recover as long as there is an ongoing increase in interest rates, because the Federal Reserve is not planning to ease monetary policy, and China is increasing liquidity around the world. There is a possibility that the cryptocurrency market will experience growth by the end of the year.
Bonds had a horrific market, stocks had a horrific market, crypto had a horrific market. Everything was negative. And what happens when everything's negative, people start selling for tax purposes towards the end of the year. Then what happens is you have to wait 30 days for wash sale rules, and then you can buy these things back. And so what happens, it used to happen all the time, Giovanni, in January. So everyone would do their tax loss selling in December. They'd wait their 30 days. And sometime in January, they would buy these assets back, and you'd get this big move in the things that had done the worst the year before. What I'm trying to say is big short squeeze, hugely overbought, hugely overbought. Bitcoin's as overbought as I've ever seen it. That is not a condition to start a long-term bull run, right? That's a condition for short-term weakness and kind of a retracement, and then the start. But the pattern we need to look for, and we talked a little bit about this last time, is even though there's chop in spring, what you're looking for is a series of higher lows. Now, you'd like higher highs too, but that's not as important as higher lows. If you keep making higher lows, that means there's accumulation pressure in the market. And I think, we're going to be range bound in this, call it 20 to 24 range for a while. Then we'll be closer to that summer period. And I think that's just time, place, and events, April-ish. And again, seasonally, Q2 and Q4 are the most positive for Bitcoin. So it's setting up to have a pretty nice move April, May, June this year. I think zero chance they cut rates anytime soon. The Fed clearly is not loosening, right? They're not tightening as quickly, but they're still doing QT. They're still shrinking their balance sheet, and they're still raising rates. But the PBOC has unleashed a huge wave of liquidity. I mean, they are flooding their market, and Chinese stocks are up a ton. Chinese markets are rallying. Economic activity is surging, and China drives liquidity around the world. So used car prices are now plummeting because there's more cars coming in, China's reopening, all that good stuff. So I think by the end of this year, CPI is going to be close to, it could be zero, could be negative, month over month, quarter over quarter. But, trailing numbers probably around 2%. That's not a situation where you need to be tightening. There will be a tailwind, I think, for digital assets. The market is saying by the middle of this year, the Fed's going to be cutting. Now, I think that's too aggressive. I don't think that's going to happen. It's possible, certainly possible, but I don't think it's going to happen. What I do think is very likely, is the Fed signaling that, okay, we're good. But that will be interpreted as we're going to cut, and then risk assets will explode again. Crypto markets, particularly Bitcoin, are very uncorrelated to stocks, other than for very short periods of time during deleveraging. The only time correlation rises is when Bitcoin is being forced to be sold because there's too much leverage. There's not as much leverage in the system as there was. We had a big deleveraging. In the crypto market, I'll argue there's very little leverage left. Very little leverage left. So the idea there's going to be a bunch of unwinding in crypto, not very likely. Now, is there still leverage left in stocks? Yes. Could that deleveraging cause people to sell Bitcoin? Less. Why? Because they already sold. So now what we have is a holder base that's very different from the holder base of stocks and bonds. The last phase of the bear market is the toughest part. My belief is we start out of that cycle a little bit earlier. I think the market always anticipates the halving. So if the halving is, maybe you're right, maybe it is March, April, but sometime in that Q1-ish zone of 2024, 9 months before that, usually when the beginnings of summer start to, the crocuses start to pop and the buds are. This year, there's not going to be a lot of taxes paid because last year was so crappy. So I think there's not going to be a lot of downside pressure in March, April this year. So my guess is we'll probably start earlier rather than later. We'll probably have an early summer as opposed to a late summer, would be my guess. The halving number is 100. All right, if that's the target. And then we back up from that. We say, all right, well, where are we today? We're at 23,000. Where should we get by the time the halving occurs? Could we be back to 50, 60,000? That's a pretty good guess. Then as we approach the halving, we start to accelerate into the target, and then we parabolic past it. The fair value is 100K per Bitcoin. How close we stay to fair value is the question. Do I think we get there by the end of this year? Probably not, but could be surprised, right?
What are your thoughts on what Mark is saying in this situation? Do you believe that Bitcoin will experience a surge in price during the month of April or May of this year? Leave a comment with your ideas below, and we appreciate you tuning in to Market Empire. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.